And by that, I mean, I was a very rebellious teenager, and I often expressed myself through my art, you know, whether it was like photography or making strange sculptures that I, you know, would have in my bedroom. And it, like, again, was through that process of like expressing myself and then reflecting upon this thing that I had expressed, and, you know, trying to make the next art piece and trying to dissect, you know, what was it there that I didn't like about that thing, and why did I create a thing in this particular way. And that kind of continual process of self-reflection is what has been like a refining piece kind of throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, at times I really struggled with depression, with anxiety, as I went through my own process of trying to find who I was and where I fit into, you know, the larger puzzle of life.
Right.
And it is like that, kind of that sense of not knowing, just beginning yoga as a practitioner. You know, I didn't even necessarily go into it with that intention. It was more so that, you know, I was going into yoga to try a thing, you know, in the search for where is it that I fit into this puzzle piece,
right.
And that I had a revelation in this practice that I don't know, I got a sense of myself on a different level.
Okay.
And began to follow that path.
Okay. So did you kind of stumble across yoga, or did someone sort of like approach you and say, hey, you know what, let's go take yoga classes together?
You know, I think initially I was probably introduced to just mindfulness.
Gotcha.
And when I try to think back, probably at times when I was really struggling with depression and anxiety, just as I kind of went through that sense, trying to find myself in the world. And I was, you know, picking up mindfulness exercises. So they were kind of there in the background. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, I decided to take a prenatal yoga class. That was about 10 years ago. And I really enjoyed the practice, and I found it really easy to kind of integrate those mindfulness exercises that I had learned in the practice. And so I just stuck with it, you know, and I practiced for another, I guess, 6 or 7 years. And the more I practiced, the more curious I got about it. The more I started to read the history of yoga, the more I started to delve into Vedic texts. And eventually I went to Indonesia to study meditation, and then went to India to study yoga.
That's pretty awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. So as you know, like, we're in a very interesting time with the pandemic and everything. And I think one of my questions is, how is meditation? Are you still heavily meditating on a daily basis? And how has that sort of like shaped your mindset?
Yes and no.
Okay.
You know, I think as my practice has kind of evolved, I don't always, you know, sit down with my legs crossed and my my hands in Gayan Mudra and have a very like focused meditation. But I do feel that the element of meditation is very integrated into my day-to-day life. So that when you know, I'm watching the news and something comes up that feels upsetting, I feel it in my body. I notice, and then I'm able to respond rather than maybe move into like a state of reaction. So, you know, I might watch the news and something upsetting comes up, as I say, and rather than you know, totally shut down or start behaving in some way that lacks self-awareness, I can maybe take a moment and breathe and tend to that feeling.
Right.
And so that's what I mean by my meditation practice feels more integrated. I feel like I'm more present in my whole life on a day-to-day basis. But I might only sit down for an hour, half an hour. It's not like I'm sitting down multiple hours a day trying to meditate and get through the pandemic.
Trying to survive the current time, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
um,